Hello, I'm Robert Thompson. Welcome to our YouTube channel. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about VPNs and why they're important to freelancers. Let me move my picture out of the way. Okay, one thing for freelancers is if you're working online, and especially if you're traveling, it allows you to work remotely in your home country. So you can continue to work in your home country, whether US or Canada, wherever. Um, it encrypts your information, so it keeps it private. It's particularly important if you're um, in public Wi-Fi, um, and helps you work online more safely in another country. Some countries have some interesting laws, and the VPN makes sure that you're not violating any of those. Um, and on the other side, it helps you see content from your home country. For people like us that are expats, we use a streaming service and get all of the major channels in all of the major cities. So it's actually a lot better than it used to be when we were in the US. So what is a VPN? A VPN is a virtual private network. They were originally designed for companies, and a company would have their network, and then they would set up a virtual private network to allow people to connect remotely. So initially it was used for administrators and stuff, and sometimes then it was remote offices. But now a lot of times there's public VPNs, and everybody uses them. And it's simply an encrypted tunnel between your computer and a VPN server in another location. They call it a tunnel because all the information is sent through it and comes out on the other side. Um, and it looks like you're working wherever that VPN server is located. Now, before we go any deeper, I need to explain a couple of networking terms. I hate to go too much into technology, but you can't avoid it. Um, First thing is an IP address. Every device on the internet and on your home network has an IP address. It's a unique number, and your local network actually assigns you the address. Um, and to make it easier to read, it's written with nodes. Like most of your home networks will be 192.168 dot zero, whatever. Um, An ISP is the internet service providers and simply the company you get internet access from. Um, so here we use Tigo and we used to use Tigo and Mobile. We used to have Spectrum in Florida, Verizon, AT&T, a whole bunch of them. Um, and a router is important to understand. It's a device that connects your network to the other networks. And home routers have two IP addresses, one on your network and one on the ISP network. Um, and encryption, I mentioned this before, it's simply a technique that puts a mathematical algorithm around all the text and converts it into something that you can't read. And you need to have a key so you can decode it and see what originally was there. So you'll see encryption um, a lot, and that makes you secure. Um, so when you have multiple networks, this is how you get to the network. Um, in this case, on the right, I've got my computer on our network, um, and our network has an address of 192.168.0.1. But the router connects to the rest of the world, and the one that 192.168 address is what we call a private address. So it can be used over and over again. And this is how the internet people originally got around the problem of not having enough addresses. Um, but so your address when you're working on the internet is actually the one the ISP assigned. In our case, it's 186.73.231.11. Now, you're not going to remember those numbers. They're hard to, so they have something called DNS, or name lookup. And what that does is it translates your name of a computer to an address. So mail.google.com becomes 142.251.35.229. So you don't have to remember that 142 address. You just remember mail.google.com. And that also makes it nice because there may be multiple services that provide mail.google.com. And so you can get different addresses when you go in. Um, Geolocation. Um, when you get an IP address from your ISP, the ISP sells basically a tool that lets people know where that address is. And it may be fairly generic, like in Panama, it may just be that you're in Panama. But in the US, it actually connects your street address to the IP address. And this is how they know where your computer was, if you were hacking or something like that. Um, and this is also how you get local advertising. That's why companies will pay for these addresses. Um, I mentioned a VPN uses encryption, and it's between your device and the VPN server. One thing about encryption, there are different types of encryption or different protocols, and they encrypt things differently. And you can actually select the protocol on most VPN tools, um, although the default is usually fine. And then all traffic is sent through that tunnel to the VPN server. So other computers on the internet only see the IP address of the VPN server. So it looks like you're working wherever the VPN server is. And it also means local authorities cannot monitor your work because it's encrypted. And if you're working in some place like China and North Korea and now even the US, you may want to do that. Um, so without a VPN, if I've got um, my computer here in Panama, my computer is on our network, so the name is mycomputer.our Um, well, the router has the address of 18673.32111, and that's what the world sees. And when you go into mail.google.com, the browser stores your public IP address in a cookie. So now there's a history of where you came from and where you went to. So Google knows exactly where the message came from. But if I'm doing using a VPN, well, my computer is still in Panama, but my encrypted VPN tunnel sends all the traffic to a VPN server in their local ISP in Florida. Um, so in this case, it happened to be a 185.203.218.190 number. And that is a Florida associated with a Florida address. So the browser sees that address, and that's what is used for tracking. Um, and it's actually the encryption's done by an app on your PC, so no one can see the actual data. Um, there are many public VPN providers. Some of the big ones are ExpressVPN. We use NordVPN and like it. Surfshark is another big one. PureVPN. And you can, Google VPN reviews and see which one is the top of the list right now. There are also private VPNs. If you're working as a freelancer, you may go into a company and they say, well, we want you to put a VPN on your computer so you can use apps on our network. And so you actually have a private VPN that goes from your PC right into the company. Um, You could also build your own VPN. Um, I'll talk a little more about private VP or private IP addresses in a minute, but before you started being able to do that, some people would build their own VPN server so they weren't sharing the same IP address as other users, um, because that can create problems. And then I'll talk a little bit about problems. So one is, if you're unable to connect to a site in your home country, it could be that that shared VPN address was blocked because somebody who was using the same VPN server was doing something abusive, hacking or something else. And so the site blocks that as a known VPN address and doesn't let it in. They can also block because they detect a VPN protocol, and that's a little more depth. You may be unable to connect to a site in a local country. Um, they may block the US addresses in your local country. Um, the other thing is sometimes it can time out because of multiple reroutes. And I've seen this sometimes with new companies that I'm working with. It goes out through my VPN, leaves Florida, and takes a while to get down to wherever the server is in Panama, and then times out. You can also have problems with slow performance. If this only happens once in a while, this may be because the VPN server is overloaded. Um, or if you're using a shared network, it could be that your local network is overloaded. When we first got here, we were on a cable provider, and that cable provider, on the weekends, we lived in a popular beach community. So on the weekends, all of the people would come down from Panama City and start using their local addresses. And so it would slow down. So that's another thing that can happen. If it happens continually, it may be you have an older computer and it's having trouble keeping up, doing the encryption and sending the traffic. Another problem that can go wrong is just not knowing your VPN went down. Um, the internet dropped for a minute, your VPN dropped, and now you're working happily away for an hour and then realize you've been working in your local country. And that may or may not be a good thing. So, just some general solutions. If you're having a connection problem, you can reconnect. And just make sure you get a different server. When you look on the VPN, it tells you the number of the server. Make sure you get a different one because sometimes the one you were on may have gotten overloaded by somebody doing a lot of stuff. If you're really having a lot of problems, you can connect to a different city. Um, and then you may get different routing. Um, you can disable the VPN if you're working with one site. We used to have to do this a lot with banks. There were a couple of banks that would detect VPNs, and then they finally figured out that having the VPN was a lot safer, so we don't get it as much now. But if that's happening, you can just disable the VPN and see if you can get on. The other thing is if you're having continuously a problem with an app that connects to a server and it's having a problem with VPNs, you can bypass the VPN just for that selected app. Um, if the VPN is blocked, it could be because of the IP. That's the most likely. And if your site is blocking VPN addresses that it knows about, check if your VPN service provider has a list of new servers. They're always putting new addresses online. And so companies, if they've got an old list and blocked a server a while ago, you may be able to get one specifically that's a new server and avoid it. Another thing you can do is purchase a private IP address. This used to be really expensive, but now it's under $20 a year. Um, the other reason a VPN is blocked is could be detecting a protocol. And there are some protocols that can be detected. And you may want to, in this case, look at the default for your protocol and change it and see if that helps. Now, if you're working without a VPN, um, the problem may be because um, well, you've disconnected. And the way to avoid that is set up something called auto connect. If you go into settings on your VPN server, there's auto connect. You can connect to a particular server. Um, and so if you have an outage, it'll come back on. Um, the other thing you can do is set up a kill switch. And I actually have this set up for my browser. If the VPN goes away and is off, I lose my browser. It just kills the app. Um, and so that lets me know something happened, that my VPN is down. And most of the time it's I left, went to the bathroom, come back, and my browser's down. Then I know I lost the VPN, usually because I had an internet outage for a little while. Um, Here's a more detailed solution list. Um, and I'm not going to go through all of these details. Um, but you can screenshot this page and um, or you can email me for a copy. So some helpful tools that you can use when you're trying to figure out what your VPN's doing. What's my IP.com lets you know what the internet sees as your IP address. So again, that may be your local public internet. It may be your VPN. Um, and so you can try it with and without and see the difference. You can do speed tests, speedtest.net and speed.cloudflare.com are a couple. A lot of the VPN servers have them. Um, so there's a lot of different ways you can do that. There's another tool that you can use if you think that your company's blocking you because there's a DNS leak that's used to detect the VPN. You can use ipleak.net. It's a little more advanced topic, so I'm not going to go into detail. So some best practices: use the VPN consistently. Um, especially if you're traveling. When I first moved to Panama, I came down on the boat and I wasn't using a VPN, and I got a note um, from yep, Upwork saying, "We noticed you're in Mexico. What's going on?" And I had to tell them I was on a boat and out there. But then I started using the VPN consistently, so I always work from Florida. Use a reputable VPN service. Like I said, there's dozens of them out there, but a Google search brings up the top rate at once. Keep your VPN client software updated. If it's asking you to update, do it. There's always new protocols that are coming out. And again, consider kill switches so that you know it went down. Um, so if you like this, share it for us. If you need coaching, you can contact us, or if you want a copy of that sheet, you can send an email to info@rptvirtualservices.com. And also follow our blog on our website, www.rptvirtualservices.com. And have a great week.